Okay, this video is called Why I Believe in God, Jesus Christ, the Theistic God. Well, the first one is, I've read the Bible, I've read the Bible commentary, 11 out of the 12 apostles agreed to be martyred for Christ, historical information about the life of Christ. But I realize most people, if they're not Christians already, they probably don't care about that. So let's move beyond that. Okay, and I am a Christian, by the way. Okay, so origin of the universe. The origin of the universe has now been shown to have occurred as a sudden event, the so-called Big Bang Theory, the singularity moment. And that indicates an unmoved mover, okay? And then, what comes before that? We don't know, but something made it happen, something that was beyond the laws of space and time and physics. And only God fits that description, okay? Then there's the astronomy fine-tuning arguments. If you get into the astronomy, we're not going to go into all the details of it, but if you do, you will see there are so many coincidences, it seems that it only could have been designed that way. Okay, then there's the OOL arguments. These are the origin of life arguments. The best commentator YouTube video guy on the internet is James Tour, PhD. He's a nanotechnology, synthetic organic chemist, and the guy's a genius. And basically, the closer you look at the origin of life, the more amazing of a miracle it becomes. It's not just making the basic building blocks of life, RNA, DNA, proteins, and sugars and whatnot. It's the fact they have to be chiral. So you have to have chiral synthesis. You can't have racemic synthesis whereby there's a whole mixture of left and right and antiomers and all that. No, they have to be properly made so everything works. And you have to have a purified synthetic product. It's very difficult to accomplish that in an organic synthesis lab. I minored in chemistry at Stanford, okay? And trust me, it's difficult to get exactly what you want in the products, okay? So that requires a very sophisticated system and not just some random coincidence. And you need to have a lot. I think one paper I read predicted the minimum number of genes you could have was 256, okay? That's a lot of genes, okay? All right, so what else? Creation ex nihilo. It came out of nothing. It had to come from non-life. That's geologic chemistry. That's not biochemistry, okay? Then there's the concept that it had to be a theistic God, not a deistic God. So a deistic God is one that maybe created the universe, created life, and then left it alone to let whatever happens, happens. And the reason I say it had to be theistic God, the Big Bang, everything was too hot. You couldn't make any life when it was that hot. So the God had to come back. So he had to care enough to come back. And that implies a theistic God. Okay, a God who at least cares a little bit. Okay, the next thing is, we talked about chiral chemistry. We talked about the chicken and egg problems. How can you have RNA world and make your proteins and make your RNA? You can't have one fully without having the other. Okay, so there's a lot of problems with that. All the different theories like RNA world and stuff, they just don't work. Okay, then there's the fine-tuning arguments of biochemistry. When you start looking at the details of the bonding lengths and the molecules involved in life, there's too many coincidences for it to have happened by chance. Okay, those are called the fine-tuning arguments of biochemistry. Okay, the next thing is OOE, origin of eukaryotes. Eukaryotes were formed, the general theory is endosymbiosis. Okay, there's problems with endosymbiosis though. The idea that one bacteria ingested a mitochondria, then the mitochondria lived inside of it and they were a cooperative partnership. Because why would the mitochondria give away its ATP to the bacteria that had just eaten it? That's just too opposite of normal behavior, implying that there was a creator that made it happen. Okay, and it only happened once. So that's all the issues about the origin of eukaryotes. So a eukaryote is a cell that, you learn that it's a cell that has a nucleus, but the big thing about it is it has mitochondria, okay? So that's the unanswered question with eukaryotes. Okay, the next thing is the biological Big Bang, the Cambrian expansion. All these animal phyla just popped out of nowhere. There are no transitional forms for these phyla, okay? So all these animal phyla, major body forms, came out of nowhere. There's no explanation for it. There is no transitional fossils for these guys, okay? So that implies a creator made all this stuff, okay? That's the only thing that makes sense, okay? There's another thing too. We run into a problem of what is called orphan genes. Orphan genes are genes that are unique to a given species. And there are lots and lots and lots of orphan genes for different plant species, lots and lots of orphan genes for different animal species. And what I mean by orphan genes is that they don't have a metaphor. They don't have an analogy in the earlier different life forms, so to speak. What I'm trying to say is they came out of nowhere and they're unique for that particular species, implying a creation moment. They can't explain them, okay? And there's tons of these orphan genes in all these different animal species, implying a creator. Thank you. All right, the next thing is the irreducible complexity of biological cellular systems. This is called irreducible complexity. Like flagella is a rotary motor. It's so complicated and it has so many interacting parts that are precisely dependent on one another that it's like, how could they have spontaneously happened? There's no precursor thing to explain them, okay? And it's the same thing with the human eye, the clotting system, the immune system. The immune system's got millions and millions of interworking parts that all have to function together. How could that have spontaneously, gradually arisen? It's just too complex. You wouldn't say a computer spontaneously built itself or a watch spontaneously built itself. There had to be an intelligent designer that took the parts, knew what to do with them, knew what each one meant, and put them all together. Okay, and if you look at protein synthesis, it's so complicated, and protein folding. The likelihood of one of these complex proteins, like with a minimum of 100 amino acids to spontaneously create itself and fold correctly, it's like 1 out of 10 to the 75th power. The scientists who studied what's involved in making proteins have said, statistically speaking, the likelihood that any of the proteins that are in the human body would have spontaneously formed themselves is essentially zero. Okay, it's just so unlikely that any of this stuff would have spontaneously formed. Okay, and then when you start really looking closer at protein synthesis, you don't even just make the protein. Then there's post-translational modifications. Okay, you chop it into smaller pieces, you add sugars to it, you have chaperone proteins to get it to fold correctly. It's an amazingly complex thing. Okay. And, that goes on and on, the complexity of biological systems, the complexity of the inner mitochondrial membrane for electron transport and for oxidative phosphorylation. It's basically a nuclear power plant, okay? And it's so incredibly complicated, it's not even funny. And then some cells will have over 100,000 mitochondria in one cell, okay? Now, if you took all the best scientists in the world and put them all together and asked them to make a nuclear power plant and put one inside a little cell, they would laugh and say, "Are you nuts? That's impossible." They can't do it. So the smartest humans can't even do almost anything compared to what we do inside. The human body does all day long, every day inside of itself. The plasma membrane is an electrical battery, okay? I mean, all of this stuff has been going on for billions of years in cellular physiology. This didn't happen by accident. The human genome is 3.3 billion base pairs of complex chemistry. Where did the information come to write that correctly? Think about your name. If it was written on this one comes from Lennox, the apologetics Christian scientist. He says, if you saw your name written on the sand in the beach, you would know that an intelligent person who knows how to read and write had written your name in the sand. So how can you explain, if your name is, let's say, 10, 20 letters, how could you explain that the human genome, the human DNA system, 23 chromosomes with 3.3 billion base pairs, that's 3.3 big B as in billion base pairs of very complex chemistry, written precisely, it has to be correct or the animal dies, okay? It's written correctly. Where did that information come from? 3.3 billion base pairs of complex chemistry cannot write itself. The information has to come from somewhere, okay? And not only that, there has to be the same level of sophisticated information to make every other animal on this planet, okay? And we're very different than chimps. We got a different number of chromosomes, much, much, much bigger brains, spoken language, symbolic behavior, and all our bones and muscles are different than chimps. They walk on all fours, please. They're hairy monsters, okay? Okay, the next thing is what I would call the Christian effect, the effect of Christianity itself on mankind. I don't think it's by accident. First of all, the Christians, they paint and draw. The ancient Greeks were sort of like the proto-Christians, and Platonism very much fed into Christianity. Okay, that is a big part of Christianity. And Roman Catholic Church overlapped with paganism for 500 years, so they're not completely different things. There's a lot of overlap there. But I want to make a couple points. The caveman painted on the wall of the cave. Most human societies, people don't draw and paint, okay? And what I'm trying to say is they're kind of backward, okay? More backward than cavemen, all right? Whereas Christian church, they developed art, they developed music, they made the first hospitals, the first charities, homeless shelters. They had respect for life and tried to diminish the frequency of infanticide and abortion. They had respect for marriage. They improved agriculture, metallurgy, making of clocks, eyeglasses, astronomy, chemistry, brought about the modern scientific method and the Industrial Revolution. All that stuff came from the Roman Catholic Church, and subsequently the Protestants did a lot. But if you looked at all these scientific achievements up until about the year 1900, 99% of them, or more than that, all came from the Christian church. Initially Europe and then also the USA. And what I'm trying to say is Christianity energizes man to do good things, okay? And when you Christianize other societies and populations, they start doing a lot more better things. It's not perfect, and secular rulers often do what they can to corrupt it, but these are some of the reasons why I believe in God, and I believe that Christianity is the best thing that ever happened to mankind. Mankind will never be perfect, but if you don't have Christianity, look around the world, what do you see? You almost always see a dictator who tells everybody, do as I say or I'll kick your butt, and then let's get more powerful and then kick our neighbor's butt and steal their stuff, okay? That's mankind since the beginning of history outside of Christianity. That's what it's pretty much like. And the Greeks had a golden age where they sort of taught themselves to think and do a lot of good, sophisticated things. And there's been a few other golden ages. There's been an attempt at a golden age, the Carolingian Renaissance of Charlemagne. Then there was the Italian Renaissance where a lot of beautiful, good things happened. There was the so-called, you could call it the Renaissance of the 1800s. It's a bunch of things. It's the Belle Epoque in France. It's the Victorian Renaissance in England, etc. And there's a lot more to it than that. Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood and whatnot of painters. Anyways, those are the reasons why I believe in God. I hope you found that helpful.